The wind howled across the dust plains of Varlin 9 as soldiers from 100 species gathered beneath the cold steel towers of the arena core. The war wasn't supposed to reach this place, but it did, and now the final battle was about to begin. They came in gold-plated machines and armored convoys. Some marched with giant beasts on chains. Others rode hoverboards that hummed with dark energy. Above them all floated banners of old empires, blinking with digital pride. But none of them noticed the human walking behind the crowd, wearing armor that looked like scrap from a junkyard. His chest plate was held together by rope and tape. One shoulder guard was made from a broken cooking pan. The rest of him looked just as forgotten. He carried no advanced rifle, no blade made of light. In his hand, he held a rusted spear with a cracked tip and a wooden shaft worn thin. The others laughed when they saw him. Not a chuckle. Full, mocking laughter that echoed through the valley like thunder. The human didn't speak. He didn't look at them. He kept walking with quiet steps, eyes on the black structure in the middle of the battleground. It was tall and hollow with gates shaped like teeth. Inside waited the champion of the Zarketh Dominion. No one had ever returned from facing him. No one had lasted more than 10 seconds. They called the human Rust Boy and placed bets on how fast he'd die. Even the commanders of Earth's remaining outposts had sent no official blessing. He wasn't their chosen warrior. He wasn't even their backup. He had volunteered after the real champion fell 2 nights ago from an orbital strike. Inside the arena, the air felt heavy. The ground pulsed with ancient energy, cracked with red symbols and streaks of dried blood. The human stepped forward and the gate closed behind him. High above, crowds from 10 star systems screamed in excitement. Their champion stood in the center, a monster in silver armor with arms like machines and eyes that burned red. His name was Rezek Kor, the Bonebreaker. Rezek didn't draw his weapon. He didn't need to. His claws were sharper than steel, and his suit moved faster than a blink. He flexed one hand and the ground beneath him shook. His gaze locked onto the human with clear disgust. "You wear trash," Rezek growled, "and yet you dare stand here. I'll peel your bones for a flagpole." The human didn't reply. He just gripped the broken spearhead tighter. The signal horn blared from above and the battle began. Rezek lunged like lightning, claws out, foot crashing into the floor. The crowd roared, but the human didn't move backward. He stepped to the side, just enough. Dust flew, sparks erupted from Rezek's claws scraping the stone. The human spun low and jabbed upward with the broken spearhead. It didn't cut through armor. It didn't need to. It found the tiny gap just below Rezek's ribs, a weak spot meant for cooling. The spearhead slipped in like a whisper. Rezek froze. The crowd went silent. His body twitched once, then twice. The red glow in his eyes flickered. He stepped back, staggered, and dropped to his knees. Black liquid spilled from his side as the human stepped back and raised the weapon again. There was no joy in his face, only focus. One more blow. One last thrust. Rezek collapsed to the ground with a sound like falling steel. The arena's lights dimmed for a moment, as if the world itself had paused to understand what had happened. The human stood still, chest rising and falling slowly. Then he turned to the watching crowd. He didn't speak. He didn't bow. He simply walked away, dragging the broken spear behind him like it had never failed him once. From the shadows above, one alien general whispered to another, "That wasn't skill," he said. "That was something else. That was human will." Asterisk news of the human's victory spread faster than any starship. By the next morning, the arena was empty, but the story echoed through every channel, every campfire, every battle tent. Some called it luck. Others whispered of forbidden Earth tech. But most were simply afraid to admit what they had seen. The Zarketh Dominion had ruled the blood pits for over 60 years. Their champion had crushed beasts, aliens, cyborgs even. Genetically modified warlords, and now he was gone. Defeated not by power, but by a man in rusted armor holding a broken stick. No one knew the human's name. Not even the broadcasters had it. His face wasn't recorded. His files had no rank, no medals, no origin logs. Some thought he was a ghost from a forgotten colony. Others claimed he was a test subject who had escaped. But no one stepped forward to claim him. Earth Command remained silent. In the War Council chambers of the Galactic Alliance, the mood shifted. The alien leaders who once dismissed Earth now leaned forward during meetings. They asked for updates on Terran deployments. They asked to review the footage again. For the first time in years, humans were no longer seen as the weakest link. But fear doesn't stay quiet for long. The Zarketh responded by calling the fight illegal. They claimed the human used poisoned metal, that his spearhead was coated in nanobots. They demanded blood justice, and they demanded it fast. The Arena Corps was summoned again, but this time it wasn't a tournament. It was a challenge, a full trial by combat. One warrior to represent Earth, one champion from the Zarketh bloodline. A match broadcast to the entire galaxy. Win, and humanity would be honored as equals. Lose, and all human colonies would be stripped of protection. When the message reached the outer barracks, the soldiers of Earth went silent. Their best warriors were still recovering. The real champions were off-world. Only the rusted armored man remained. He didn't speak when the message played. He simply looked at the broken spearhead and nodded once. He spent the next day alone. No one trained with him. No one offered advice. In the eyes of others, he had already used up his miracle. One victory was enough. Two was impossible. But he didn't act like a man who had used up anything. He sat near the old furnace behind the arena's east wall. He cleaned the spear with oil from a cracked lantern. He tightened the leather straps on his leg guards. He wrapped his wrist where the bone still ached. He worked like someone preparing to fix a broken machine, not face death. By sundown, a crowd had gathered again. They didn't chant, they didn't cheer, they just waited. The gate opened slowly, revealing the challenger. This one was no warrior. He was a brute from the inner chambers of Zarketh breeding vats. Standing 10 feet tall, with arms like hydraulic drills and eyes made of polished bone. He didn't walk. He stomped like a walking tank. The human entered from the opposite gate. Same armor. Same slow walk, same rust. The only new thing was a strip of dark cloth tied around his left hand, a mourning ribbon from a dead friend. Number. One knew who gave it to him. The bell sounded. The giant lunged. The human ducked. Sparks flew. The spear cracked. The human rolled. The brute's foot shattered stone. The crowd gasped. The arena trembled. The battle had begun again, and it was faster than before. Each clash rang like thunder. The brute's fists missed by inches. The spearhead scraped across reinforced flesh but didn't pierce. The human didn't panic. He kept moving, kept breathing, kept waiting for a sign. And then it came. One stumble. One moment of imbalance. The brute twisted his torso too far during a slam. The human stepped in, shoved the broken spearhead into the hollow beneath his arm, and pushed with all his weight. There was no scream, only a gasp. The brute staggered back, collapsed forward, and hit the ground like a building falling down. Silence. Fell again. The human knelt, picked up the spear, and walked out without turning back. His armor was still rusted. But no one laughed this time. The body of the Zarketh brute was dragged out of the arena by machines built for moving fallen titans. Not one word was spoken by the crowd as they watched the human disappear into the shadows again. The second impossible victory had broken something. Deeper than pride, the throne chamber of the Dominion convulsed with anger. Screens cracked under clenched claws. Orders flew from every direction. The ruling houses of Zarketh demanded revenge, not through battle, but through total extermination. They could not accept defeat by a man in rusted armor with a handmade spear. One of the High Council generals slammed his fist onto the war map. "This is not war," he shouted. "This is humiliation." He must be erased from every record before others start to believe he matters. The Zarketh royal heir, a woman bred for logic and rule, remained still. Her black eyes studied the footage again and again. She didn't see luck. She didn't see weakness. She saw precision and purpose. Something Zarketh soldiers had long abandoned in favor of brute strength. "We will do nothing," she said at last. "Because the more we push, the stronger their story becomes." But not all listened. In the dark alleys between star systems, bounty hunters were paid in uranium and blood to find the human. Surveillance probes swept refugee ships and smuggler ports. Across dead moons and crater cities, the word spread. The nameless warrior was now a legend in the making. Back on Earth's side of the galaxy, the soldier remained hidden. He didn't return to his base. He didn't ask for medals. He lived in the unused tunnels below the arena complex, where broken machines lay forgotten and rats built nests in old war banners. He sharpened the same broken spearhead with a stolen rock from the training yard. He ate cold protein packs and slept beside the warmth of a rusted generator. No one approached him except a child, an orphan who had once cleaned blood from the arena stones. She left bread near his boots and said nothing. One morning, he found the child crying. Her brother had been taken by guards who thought he was a spy. The human stood silently, then walked out without a word. That same night, the boy was returned to her with bruises and torn clothes, but still breathing. The act was never reported, but word spread fast. Whispers replaced fear. Some soldiers started patrolling the outer fences harder. Some cleaned their armor for the first time in weeks. Others sat near the arena edge and stared at the rusted door where the human had last entered. The Dominion noticed the shift. They sent a message to Earth's High Command, warning them not to glorify him. They labeled him a rogue element. A wild spark, but the leaders on Earth didn't answer right away. Behind closed doors, generals debated what they feared more, the wrath of the Dominion, or the hope one man had ignited. They checked his file again. Still no name. No birth record. Only fragments. A dishonorably discharged scout. Missing in action 3 years ago. Presumed dead. But now, very much alive. One general, an old woman with scars across her face, spoke quietly. Maybe that's why he wins. Because no one owns him. He fights for something else. In the next battle draft, Earth's morale jumped by 17%. Enlistment from the outer colonies doubled. A new phrase began to show up on helmets and armor across the fleets. It wasn't a name. It wasn't a rank. It was a symbol of rust scratched into steel. It meant someone who survives. Someone who breaks fate. Someone who wins with nothing. It meant him. Asterisk, the Dominion didn't stop their search. They sent new machines across the neutral zones. Cloaked. Drones scanned entire city blocks. Interceptors hunted cargo ships. But the human didn't hide in space. He remained right where they'd last seen him, beneath the arena, where rust and silence ruled. A few soldiers passed by his door each day. Some left water. Some left tools. None dared speak. He was not like them. He was not one of them. He was something else now. Something older. Something dangerous. He had started fixing things around the tunnels. Broken lights now flickered dim yellow instead of staying dead. An old air fan rattled again. Even the water line, once dry, now hissed with cold pressure. He never asked for thanks. He never left notes. He just made the dark breathe again. But the quiet would not last. One evening, a stranger arrived in the tunnel. She wore armor that shone with violet metal and moved like someone born in zero gravity. Her helmet was marked with Dominion sigils, but it was clear she was not here to kill. Not yet. She didn't speak when she found the human sharpening. His broken spearhead, he didn't rise, he didn't move. The sparks from his grindstone danced in silence. Only after 10 full seconds did she lower her hood. "I'm not your enemy," she said, "but I need to know what you are." The human didn't answer. He finished the edge. Then he looked at her with calm, tired eyes. His voice came low and steady. "I'm the one who never broke." That was all he said. The woman hesitated, then nodded. She sat on a crate across from him and unrolled a scroll made of light. Holograms rose between them. Images of Dominion warships. Secret invasions, broken treaties, hidden betrayals. She spoke of something big, a final strike the Dominion was planning. Something massive and fast. A purge. "They'll blame it on humans," she said. "Then wipe out anyone who still believes." "In you." He listened without blinking. Then stood up slowly and picked up his spear. She asked him what he would do. He didn't answer. He turned and walked toward the stairs that led back to the surface. She followed him, silent, not knowing if she had just sparked a rebellion or a legend. The night above was cold and filled with smoke. The stars were hidden behind metal clouds from war factories. Lights flickered across the arena gates as patrols scanned for any sign of infiltration. But no one stopped the human. His presence alone parted the guards. He entered the control hall where commanders barked. Orders and officers ran logistics. The room froze when they saw him. Reports halted mid-sentence. Conversations dropped. The general at the table stood up slowly, unsure if she should salute. "I need a ship," he said. "And a team." There was no debate, no committee, no waiting. For authorization, the general nodded once. "Pick what you need," she said. "But if you fail, they'll crush Earth before sunrise." He didn't look back. He didn't smile. He walked out and left behind the silence of those who understood what had just begun. That night, a small transport lifted off without fanfare. On board were 7 volunteers. None of them had medals, none had rank. But all had seen the man fight. All had seen him walk away from death. They didn't know the plan. They didn't need to. They followed the one thing they still believed in. A man in rusted armor carrying a broken spearhead. The ship cut through the edge of hostile space without leaving a trail. Its engines ran cold. Its hull was wrapped in scavenged plates from a dozen wrecked cruisers. Inside, silence ruled. No one played cards. No one joked. Every crew member sat strapped in, armor checked, weapons secured. The human sat near the back. His rusted armor creaked with every turn. He didn't sleep. He didn't blink much. He simply watched the stars vanish through the small side window, one by one, as they entered the Dominion's inner rings. Beside him, a woman adjusted her helmet straps. She had lost her arm in the last rebellion. Now she carried a metal one carved with the word hope. She didn't ask questions. She had seen the arena broadcast. That was enough. The target was not a base. It was a shipyard floating above a dying star, one of the Dominion's oldest and most secure locations. Hidden from most maps. Guarded by drones, warships, and automated fire rings. But it was also where the purge orders were stored. If those orders were erased, the attack could be delayed, maybe even stopped. It wasn't a war plan. It was a spark. Just enough to burn one fuse before the fire could spread. The crew entered the shipyard through a maintenance tunnel used only by scrap haulers. The metal was old, unwatched, covered in dust and silence. The human led the way, moving like he had memorized the shape of darkness. They reached the core node within 2 hours. One of the team, a small man with scanner eyes, tapped the panel. The code was clean, the firewall soft. The Dominion had grown too proud. They never expected anyone to crawl in through forgotten doors. But nothing stays easy. The alarm went off. Not from the system, but from a motion trigger hidden behind a wall plate. Defense units poured in within seconds. Their bodies were long and plated, like armored insects. Their rifles buzzed with plasma. The team fought without shouting. They moved like shadows, fast and smart. The woman with the metal arm crushed two bots with a wall pipe. Another soldier used heat charges to collapse a side corridor. The scanner-eyed man took a bolt to the chest and still dragged himself forward to finish the upload. In the middle of the chaos, the human stood firm. His spearhead flashed as it met steel and energy alike. It didn't look sharp. It didn't look new. But it moved with precision, stabbing between gaps, striking joints, splitting armor with the sound of ripping bone. When the last bot fell, smoke filled the chamber. The floor was scorched. 3 of the 7 lay wounded. 1 didn't move. The human checked each of them, then nodded once. The mission had worked. The purge orders were gone. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He lifted the wounded onto makeshift stretchers made of torn plating and moved without pause toward the exit tunnel. The evacuation path was already crawling with enemy scouts. There was no time to retreat, no room to wait. The human handed his spearhead to the woman with the metal arm and took a pipe from the wall instead. "You lead," he said. "I'll clear the way." No one argued. No one questioned. They followed him through fire and gunmetal and screams. They followed the man in rust who struck like a storm. They made it to the outer deck just as their ship decloaked. The pilot screamed into comms to jump fast. The crew dove inside. The last one aboard was the human. He turned once as a Dominion ship locked on, then hurled the pipe like a missile into its gun core. The explosion cracked the sky. The door sealed. Asterisk. The ship broke atmosphere just as the last wave of plasma fire scraped its tail. Inside, the injured groaned, and the walls creaked with pressure, but the engines held. The stars ahead looked sharper than ever, like they were waiting for the crew to return. No one spoke until the wounded were stable. The scanner-eyed man had survived but wouldn't be walking again. The others had burns, shattered limbs, and deep cuts. Yet their eyes held something new. Not fear, not pain. It was purpose. The human sat in silence near the loading hatch. His rusted armor was black with carbon burns. His spearhead lay beside him, cracked again. He didn't fix it yet. He simply stared at it like it had spoken to him in the fire. They reached safe zone orbit 2 hours later. Earth Command sent a message before they could land. A message with no voice, only text. 4 words blinked on the screen. Return immediately. Dominion retreating. No one could believe it. The Dominion never retreated. They advanced. They swallowed. They burned, yet now their fleets were pulling back. Their outer stations were going dark. Their war banners were falling from satellites like shredded flags. The truth came days later. The heir to the Zarketh Dominion, Princess Vena Kor, had vanished. Some said she defected. Others claimed she was assassinated for doubting the purge. But one thing was clear. Without her voice, the other leaders could not agree. Civil war bloomed within their ranks. Old grudges returned. Forgotten rivals rose. Up, the Dominion was tearing itself apart from the inside, and no one knew who had lit the match. Earth Command requested the human to appear before the Galactic Council. For the first time in history, a Terran warrior was asked to speak as an equal among species that once saw his kind as pests. He arrived late. Not because of pride, but because he had stopped along the way to bury the soldier who had died during the mission. No cameras were allowed. No speech was made. Just a grave marked with the shape of a spear scratched into stone. When he entered the council hall, 1,000 eyes turned. Alien generals, queens, scientists, war machines with thinking cores. All waited in silence. Some stared in curiosity, others in disbelief, a few in fear. He didn't wear polished armor. He didn't carry medals or weapons. Just rusted gear, and his broken spearhead hanging from a rope tied to his back. One of the council leaders asked him what humans wanted in return. Territory, resources, power. His answer was short: leave Earth alone. And remember what one rusted blade can do. Then he walked out. The silence he left behind lasted longer than any war cry. Across the galaxy, rebellions sparked. Stories of the humans spread like fire across dead systems. Colonies that once begged for help now stood tall. Resistance cells painted his image on the walls: rusted armor, broken spear, steady eyes. They called him many things. Some called him the Ghost of Steel. Others named him the Spearless King. But the ones who knew better called him what he truly was: a soldier who never gave up. He returned to the tunnels beneath the arena, even though the war had shifted. He rebuilt broken machines, fed the orphan girl, reforged the spearhead one more time, not because he needed to fight again, but because rust never sleeps. The arena above was empty now. No crowds, no banners, no commanders barking orders through comms. Just the cold wind and broken seats, stained with old victories and forgotten defeats. The human moved slowly through the ruined halls. Each step echoed across cracked tiles. His armor scraped against metal corners. Unchanged from the day he first entered the arena as nothing more than a joke, no one laughed anymore. The laughter had died in the firestorms and faded in the screams of retreating fleets. His name was still unknown to most, but his silence was louder than any anthem. He passed the place where he once sat sharpening his spearhead. The grindstone was still there, dust-covered, chipped. A small loaf of dried bread rested beside it. Someone still remembered. He picked it up gently, then placed it back down. Some moments weren't meant to be disturbed. Some ghosts needed to stay right where they were. Outside the gates, two soldiers waited, young, alert, eyes filled with nervous awe. They didn't stop him. They stepped aside with stiff salutes and wide stares. He gave them a slow nod and walked on. The city beyond had changed. Where once guards stood in fear, now children played in the streets. Murals of rusted warriors decorated the walls. One painting showed him with fire behind his back, walking through broken machines. No face, just posture. Strong, quiet, unstoppable. Vendors offered food to passing soldiers. Veterans leaned against stone walls, sharing stories that no longer ended in hopelessness. For the first time in decades, Earth's people walked without looking over their shoulders. But he didn't stay long. The world was healing, but his place wasn't among healed things. His hands still shook in quiet moments. His dreams still smelled of plasma and oil. So he traveled farther. Past the old barracks. Past the scrapyards where his armor had once been found. Past the broken beacon that had first called him back from exile. He stopped only when he reached the field of flags. A place where the ground had never been leveled after the war. Each banner was stuck into the dirt with names etched on small plates. Some were torn, some buried. All were honored. He found the one he was looking for near the edge. The name had worn away, but the shape of a bent pipe was tied to its pole with old wire. A memory left in silence. He sat there for hours, saying nothing, doing nothing. Just breathing in the quiet and letting the stillness wrap around him. A soft crunch of boots behind him broke the stillness. He didn't turn. The voice that followed was familiar, calm, mechanical with a hint of warmth. You never liked metals, but they're offering you one again. He replied without looking back, then let them keep it. The figure behind him chuckled once. You changed everything, you know. No, the human said. They changed because they saw what we could be, not what I am. The figure stepped closer, but still gave him space. Together, they watched the wind tug at the flags, making them dance without sound. When the sun finally dipped below the ruined hills, he stood. His armor creaked. His spearhead hung from his back once more. There was no war left to fight. But there was still work to do. He walked away from the flags, not toward the city, not toward the stars, but toward the jagged horizon where nothing waited except rust and time, because that's where he belonged. The wind over the wastelands was sharp, cutting through broken towers and old bones of war machines. Sam drifted across collapsed roads and melted structures. The world here had no name anymore. It had been erased from maps long ago. The human moved across the dead soil with slow, steady steps. His armor still clinked with rust. His boots sank slightly with every step, yet he didn't stop. He was drawn forward by something deeper than duty. He passed the remains of a battle none had spoken of. Shattered helmets, twisted rifles. A flagpole snapped in half, still stained with blood. The silence here wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air itself remembered pain. In the center of the wasteland stood a dome half buried in dust. Its walls were cracked but still hummed with faint energy. A forgotten vault. Inside it, old Dominion tech waited uncharted, undisturbed, but never truly dead. He didn't break in. He found the side panel and opened it with a code no one should have remembered. The door hissed, then opened wide. Inside, the lights blinked to life like they had been holding their breath for him. The vault held one thing. A weapon built during the early Dominion Wars. A machine not powered by energy, but by memory. It could rewrite systems, corrupt networks, spread through fleets like a virus. It was meant to be used once, then buried forever. He stared at it without touching. It looked like a perfect sphere, floating above a single spike of metal. His reflection in its surface looked older than it should have, tired, but clear-eyed. Voice echoed from behind him. It was the same woman from the Dominion, the one who once shared secrets in the tunnel. Her face was no longer hidden. Her armor was scratched. Her voice was calm. "I didn't expect you to find it." He nodded once and replied without turning, "I wasn't supposed to." But the map was inside the spear. She stepped closer. "Are you going to use it?" "No," he said. "I came to end it." She walked beside him and stared at the weapon. "If you destroy it, others might try to build it again." "They might," he said. "But not if they forget it ever existed." She raised an eyebrow. "You're going to erase it?" He nodded slowly, then reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out the broken spearhead. He placed it beneath the machine. The weapon recognized the metal, read its code, and triggered its final defense. Vault lights dimmed. The floor shifted. The air trembled. The sphere began to melt silently into the spearhead, feeding into its memory, locking itself away. Then it vanished into dust. The woman stood silent for a long time. Then she looked at him and asked the question many had feared. "What are you now?" He answered without hesitation, "I'm what they made, what they forgot, and what they can never control again." She stepped back as he walked past her. His steps were slow, but they didn't drag. The rust on his armor glinted in the dim vault light like embers refusing to go out. Above the wasteland, the sky had cleared. A rare beam of sunlight broke through the clouds and touched the ground near the vault's exit. He paused, lifted his gaze, then walked forward into it. There was no crowd, no applause, no victory chant. Only the sound of boots against dust and a rusted warrior disappearing into light. The broken spearhead was gone, but its story had been written, and the galaxy would never laugh at rust again.